kickoff at 7 p.m. It's our Gridiron Game of the Week, featuring the Wayne Warriors at the Fairmont Firebirds this Friday night. Now, back to the Justin Kinner Show, right here on ESPN Dayton, 1410 Wing AM.
All right, everybody, we are back. It is the Justin Kinner Show, and we are presented by our friends over at Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. That's right, football season obviously in full swing. High school football, college football, the National Football League. We have it all covered for you here. And, of course, as you just heard, our Gridiron Game of the Week coming up this Friday. College Football Hall of Famer Keith Byers and I will be live in Fairmont, in Kettering here, as Fairmont welcomes in the Wayne Warriors. We got a good chance to see Wayne last week as they were able to get off the mat and take care of business against Springboro. We'll see if they can keep it going coming up this Friday night. When I say this Friday night, I mean tomorrow night, this week flying by, obviously. But nonetheless, we got a lot to get into today, of course. One thing to keep in mind, as far as the spin on the Bengals and Vikings matchup coming up this weekend, without Joe Burrow playing this weekend, and the Vikings going to be without their starting quarterback, opportunity to take a look at the top two receivers in the National Football League, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. The big debate, who's the best receiver in the NFL? Now both receivers are playing with an equal deck. Both are playing with backup quarterbacks in their head-to-head. We'll get into that coming up around the corner. Reds in action tonight against the Cubs. 10 games remaining. It's a sprint to the finish line, and they start game one with the Cubs tonight with Hunter Green on the mound. So we'll get into that. We got a ton to dive into. We're going to kick off here today, every Thursday, with the voice of the Buckeyes, Mr. Paul Keels. Paul, happy Thursday. Welcome. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing, Justin?
I'm not bad. Excited to have you on. Obviously, a bye week. No game for Ohio State coming up on Saturday, of course. And with that being said, it feels like we wait so long for the season to get here, and yet here we are 3 weeks in and already the first bye week for your Buckeyes.
Well, and what happens, especially when you have a season like this, where there's two byes because of the extra Saturday between Labor Day and Thanksgiving. But you don't know if it's a good time or a bad time. It just depends on how you come out of it. But they're able to get 3 games in there. We like to tell people it's a bye weekend, not a bye week. They're practicing all the way through today, and then they'll give them the weekend off, come back Sunday night, and resume their normal week. So, but Ryan Day's calling it an improvement week. And even though things have gone reasonably well for 3 games, he and the coaching staff are still looking at areas that they can get better in.
Now that we're at the first bye weekend, as you guys called it, obviously, 3 weeks in, we've seen all different levels of opponents at this point. We've seen all different kickoff times. We've seen a lot of variables outside of them playing on the road at this point. Who are the Buckeyes right now? If someone hadn't watched a second of the Buckeyes and they asked you, Paul, to get, what's the identity of this team? Who are the Ohio State Buckeyes as we sit here 3 weeks in? As weird as that sounds.
Well, I think, Justin, you can say that they're a team that is playing very high-level defense. They gave up a sloppy bomb the other night against the Bobcats, but their defense has really been on point. And offensively, they've shown the ability to be explosive in the 2 games since the opener. In the first game, they just kind of managed things and really didn't put, their quarterback, Julian Sand, in a difficult position making his first start. But what we've seen in the last 2 weeks, they have the ability to hit the home run ball with a passing game. We're starting to see the development of a running game with great offensive line play. And we're starting to see, maybe a change in the pecking order of running backs. Bo Jackson looked really good the last 2 weeks. We know they still have a lot of confidence in C.J. Donaldson as well as James People. So an offense that can be explosive and a defense that is played at a high level.
What about if someone said, Paul, what worries you about this team? Not putting you in a position to say something bad about it, but what is it about this team that makes them vulnerable, do you think, at least as we sit here 3 games in?
Well, what we saw last week was they had some shutdowns in the red zone. That was not a good thing to have happen. And we saw Julian Sand with a couple of interceptions. One of them was a ball that was tipped and was kind of up for grabs. So there's been a little bit of a turnover presence. I wouldn't say a turnover problem. Those would be the things to be concerned about.
No game coming up this weekend, but again, they're practicing, they're preparing because the Big Ten opener coming up a week from Saturday. And not only is it the Big Ten opener, it's their first road game of the season. Obviously, that'll present a challenge for a team with the new quarterback as well. But Washington, I feel like a lot of people are kind of overlooking them a bit. The atmosphere at Washington is phenomenal, as you know. And again, for that to be where Julian Sand's going to make his first road start, that's going to be a tough environment. Do you feel like people are overlooking Washington a bit as we head into that?
Maybe just a little bit because they had a down year last year compared to being in the national championship game the year before, but they've got an exciting quarterback in Damon Williams. It's the second year of Kalen DeBoer being the head coach. We'll find out a little bit more about them this weekend when they play Washington State, because they've really not had much resistance in their first two football games. So they might be a little bit, and that will be a lot. It's one of the loudest environments from a lot of people who have been there. Now, the last time we went there with Ohio State, it wasn't that loud because Washington, number one, wasn't that good. And then number two, there were about 10,000 West Coast Ohio State alums that were there. But it'll be interesting to see how this team responds to being on the road for the first time.
We got the voice of the Buckeyes, Paul Keels, joining us now. Obviously, no game this weekend. Washington next up. Big Ten opener, road opener, of course, for the Buckeyes as well. The one thing about Washington as well, their run game, when you talk about the shutdown defense that Ohio State has been able to show thus far, we saw at times Texas, they weren't able to move the football on Ohio State a few weeks ago in the opener, but they could run on them. What challenges does Washington bring to the table? Obviously, the run game, as I mentioned, but they do bring some stuff to the table that we'll see them test the defense of Ohio State that we haven't really seen since week one.
Yeah, and I haven't had a chance to watch them yet this year. That's going to be what's going to happen after this weekend. But we know that Williams, the quarterback, can hurt you both running and throwing the football. So I'm not that familiar yet with some of the personnel they have. But, it's a program that went through a major transition. They lost Kalen DeBoer when they did and lost so many players to the transfer portal. So kind of curious to, see. I've got my DVR set to record their game with Washington State. That'll be Sunday night, looking at that Monday morning, getting a better idea of what they've got. But anytime you go on the road and anytime you're Ohio State, it's kind of what they've earned from winning a national championship and being the brand they are. They get teams' best shots. But I would agree with you, Justin. I think Washington is probably not being talked about that much just because of the difficulty they had last year.
Before we get into some of the other top Big Ten matchups this weekend, Paul, it's interesting. We had Jason Fitz and some other guests on throughout the week, just obviously talking college football. And one of the topics was just a lot of the quarterbacks that were really being, propped up heading into the season. A lot of guys aren't having the type of seasons we anticipated at the quarterback position 3 weeks in, obviously. And one name that got brought up, you look at Julian Sayin, he's playing as good as any quarterback in the country right now. To go back to him real quick, just your thoughts on the development of him 3 weeks in and how he kind of stacks up against some of the other quarterbacks in the country as we sit here 3 weeks in.
Well, he's looked very comfortable being back there. You'd think that he's played more as a starter than he already has, but we've seen the accuracy. There have been a few balls that he's probably underthrown a little bit, and his receivers have bailed him out, but we've seen him, be able to throw the deep ball. We've seen the quick release. But more than anything, spread the ball around to the playmakers. Now, Ryan Day is going to be one of those harping on taking care of the football, and, he hasn't done that entirely to the liking, but, he probably would only be to the liking if he hadn't had any interceptions at this point. But I think what we've seen is the fact that, and you hear from interviews with other players, Justin, he's become more of a vocal leader out on the field. But he just looks comfortable out there. He's a guy that looks like he's maybe more veteran than he's been, but the talent certainly shows when you watch him throw the football.
Before we let you go, just a couple Big Ten matchups this weekend I want to get your take on. Obviously, Nebraska, they're 3-0. They're going to be on CBS at 3:30 kickoff this weekend, this Saturday. They welcome in top 25 Michigan. This is kind of the first chance for Nebraska to kind of put what is supposed to be a highly anticipated season for them. They get to put their talents on display with Michigan coming to town. This is a big opportunity for them to kind of put their program on the map in the Big Ten at this point, to kind of show everybody, hey, we're a real player here. We've been winning some games the last couple of years, but we're really here to make some noise now.
It sure is, to see if they've taken the step forward that everybody thinks they have. You look at some of who they've played, and, it much like Ohio State and much like so many others, it's hard to know because the competition hasn't been the level of league competition. But this will tell us something. It'll tell us where they've really developed with Dylan Raiola at quarterback. It'll also be another example for Michigan to see if Bryce Underwood, after a tough road game at Oklahoma, if he can kind of get back to where the Michigan needs him to be. It'll be the last game that Sharon Moore is suspended this season. He has one more next year he has to serve. So there's a lot of key elements to that. But more than anything, people just are anxious to see, is this the step forward that Nebraska has wanted to take?
Absolutely. You talked about the Washington State game coming up this weekend. You talked about a team just trying to prove to people that they could take that next step forward. A big opportunity for two teams in the top 25 showdown. Illinois, top 10 team in the country at number 9. They're going to be on the road at Indiana. It's kind of crazy saying I can't wait for the Illinois-Indiana game this weekend, but that's what a lot of people are saying, including me. This is going to be a fun matchup out of the Big Ten.
It sure is. I read an article, and I can't remember the date, but somebody, I think it was Illinois' coach, Brett Bielema, who talked about when's the last time Illinois and Indiana were ranked playing one another. And it might have been, the early 1900s. But, we saw what Indiana did last year. They've replaced some key pieces, but they've got some key pieces coming back. And Illinois, a 10-win season and a bowl win a year ago, a team that had, a win that maybe doesn't get the attention that it should by going down to Duke and beating the Blue Devils the way they did. And while Illinois gets so much attention for Luke Altmaier and a returning offensive line, they got 5 interceptions in that win at Duke. They returned most of, if not all, their entire defensive secondary. But Indiana has plugged and played with another transfer quarterback in Mendoza, who's come in and played really well and kept them going. So, I think it's going to answer a couple of questions. Was Indiana and what they did last year a flash in the pan type of thing? And is Illinois really a team that has taken a step forward and can possibly contend for either playing for a Big Ten championship or getting into the college football playoff?
All right, good stuff. Paul Keels, voice of the Buckeyes, every Thursday joins us here on the Justin Kinner Show. Paul, send us out with this. We've spent a lot of time on this topic this week, an unfortunate topic, of course. Former Buckeye Joe Burrow goes down in that game last week against, the Jaguars, and not out for the season, but out a good chunk, out the next 3 months. Just your thoughts on the Bengals quarterback going to be missing some key time.
Yeah, it just seems like Joe can't get out of the injury bug's way, and it's unfortunate. But, Jake Browning, despite the interceptions he threw Sunday, he was impressive in leading them from behind to win. I think it's encouraging. He's been in the system for a while. When he has played like he did a couple of years ago, he's shown some good moments. So, basically at 2-0, if they can kind of keep things at a status quo or, keep things reasonably well. And if Burrow does come back in December, like folks are hoping, who knows? But, what a big blow for a guy that just can't seem to shake the injury bug.
All right, Paul, appreciate your time every week as always. Thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
You got it, Justin. Take care.
All right, good stuff. Voice of the Buckeyes, Paul Keels. If you missed that, we'll have that for you coming up here later on in just a little bit. It'll also be available on the ESPN Dayton's YouTube channel and the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. Jamar Chase against Justin Jefferson coming up this Sunday, week 3 of the National Football League, of course. And, well, Jamar Chase, we know, is playing with the backup quarterback, but so is Justin Jefferson. So kind of a good opportunity to see which wide receiver is the best of the two. That's always seems to be the two receivers that everyone seems to debate over the last couple of years. And I think we're going to learn a lot about both receivers moving forward, playing with backup quarterbacks. We'll be right back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. Justin Kinner back with you here. Dayton's ESPN Radio 1410 Wing AM. Shout out to Paul Keels, voice of the Buckeyes, for giving us some time here on the bye week. Ohio State 3-0, number one team in the country, and they're preparing to take on Washington. Washington will be at Washington State coming up this Saturday, and then they'll turn their attention towards the Buckeyes. When I talk about Washington as far as being the next test for Ohio State, they don't put them in that upper tier, of course, with like an Oregon, they're not facing an Oregon, but they are facing a challenge. Washington at home, no worries. Washington on the road, they have enough talent to be able to give Ohio State some fits if they're not out there prepared and mentally ready to play. And when you have a, first-year starting quarterback who is 3-0, they've faced a lot of pressure, and Julian Sain, he's gone up against the number one team in the country and at the time in Texas and beat the number one team in the country at the time in Texas. That's a lot of pressure, and he came out, on the right end of that. But to go on the road is a different story when you have a stadium full of fans who are not pulling for you to succeed. And they're, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's that type of thing. So we'll see. We'll focus more on that as we get closer to that matchup. But nonetheless, Ohio State 3-0 bye week. A lot of big games this coming up weekend, including that Indiana-Illinois game that we talked about. But the Bengals and the Vikings coming up this weekend. And it looks like Carson Wentz is going to be the quarterback, throwing it around, of course, for the Vikings. So that's what Justin Jefferson is going to have to work with coming up. And then, of course, Jake Browning, the quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, as you guys know, and this is not, new, anytime we ever have a debate about which player is better than who or which quarterback or which career, which legacy, I'm a, do more with less guy. Anyone that does more with less, all right, I'm more impressed with that individual. So am I as impressed with Jamar Chase, who has an MVP caliber quarterback throwing him the football every single week? Am I more impressed with that and his numbers than I am with the guy in Justin Jefferson that has continuously played with the likes of, Kirk Cousins? That's his Joe Burrow, if you will. And I think everyone with a brain will take Joe Burrow over Kirk Cousins any day of the week, right? Like, in 32 games, without Kirk Cousins throwing him the football, Justin Jefferson, okay, in those 25 games, he has 32 catches for 503 yards and 2 touchdowns in 5 games where Kirk Cousins was injured, and this goes back in 2023. Okay, so like when you take Justin Jefferson starting quarterback away, who is he? What does he look like? Is he elevating the quarterback, or does he need the quarterback to elevate him? That's what I'm looking for in these debates of who's better, Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase. Which receiver is better? I see right off the bat in the chat, Ryan Roth, Jamar Chase is. Ryan Roth, shout out to Ryan Roth. I love Ryan Roth. However, Ryan Roth is a Bengals fan, so it doesn't surprise me that he says Jamar Chase is. The bottom line is, if you have to pick a wide receiver and you have the second pick and someone takes Justin Jefferson and you're stuck with Jamar Chase, you're pretty good. If someone takes Jamar Chase and you're stuck with Justin Jefferson, you're doing just fine. Nobody feels sorry for you, and you're not losing sleep at night. Let's just put it that way. But when it does come down to defining who is the best receiver in football, it is between these two. And I'm always, which receiver is great regardless of who's throwing him the football. And when it comes to that angle, there's only one receiver that fits that mold, and that's Justin Jefferson. It's not because I'm a Browns fan. It's not because I'm a Bengals hater. It's not because of any of that. It's you would use that logic with anything else, but you don't want to use it because it's your player, and I get that. That's what makes this matchup unique coming up this weekend. It's a great opportunity to see which wide receiver is going to step up for his team and help lead the team to victory coming up on Sunday. Because the thing about Justin Jefferson, the thing about Jamar Chase is he has not been a guy that you could technically rely on when Joe Burrow's not out there throwing in the football. Now, I am not blind to the numbers that he just put up this past Sunday. If that's who, and I don't expect Jamar Chase to put up 150 yards and 2 touchdowns every single week. But I'm also a guy that when you look at data, I'm not going to look at an outlier game. And when I say outlier game, I mean an outlier 2.5 quarters. Because there's way more data, there's way more games, there's way more numbers to look at when it comes to Jamar Chase and his production when Joe Burrow's not throwing him the football. All right, how about, before this past Sunday, Jamar Chase has played in 7 games in the NFL without Joe Burrow throwing him the football. And in those 7 games, he has a total of 31 catches for 409 yards. 409 yards in 7 games. Jamar Chase pulls in about 60 yards a game. You know how many touchdowns Jamar Chase has had in 7 games without Joe Burrow before this past Sunday? Uno. His number. Jamar Chase has only been able to pull in 1 touchdown in the absence of Joe Burrow in his career. Jamar Chase has only been able to muster up 409 yards on 31 catches in 7 games without Joe Burrow in his career. To me, I'm a do more with less guy. And I'm not going to ignore what he did this past Sunday, because what he did this past Sunday was phenomenal. And if Jamar Chase could do that with Jake Browning throwing him the football, then you know what? The Bengals will have a chance each week. But if Jamar Chase is so Joe Burrow dependent, I don't see how this offense continues. To T. Higgins' credit, T. Higgins, he averages close to about 84 yards a game in the absence of Joe Burrow. T. Higgins, to me, is more versatile without Joe Burrow. T. Higgins has always been a receiver in his career that has been able to make noise regardless of who's throwing him the football. And I think that that is a very valuable asset to have. And I'm not saying Jamar Chase isn't. Jamar Chase with Joe Burrow, he's the number 1 wide receiver in football. Jamar Chase without him, not so much. Then you look at Justin Jefferson. And there is enough data to show Justin Jefferson how good he is without a starting quarterback. And for instance, I mean, let's be clear here. Jamar Chase and all the numbers he puts up, the fact that Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase have such similar numbers throughout their career is crazy, and I'll tell you why. Jamar Chase's numbers being so good and being as high as they are, it's not surprising when you look at who's throwing him the football. It's very surprising to see Justin Jefferson's numbers be what they are when you see who's been throwing him the football. Guys, Kirk Cousins. I love Kirk Cousins, but Kirk Cousins has missed a lot of time, did miss a lot of time when he was with the Vikings with Justin Jefferson there. Justin Jefferson, while Jamar Chase got to play 7 measly games without Joe Burrow, and by the way, was not good. Jamar Chase without Joe Burrow just is not good production-wise. It's not even an opinion. It's data. It's a fact. Justin Jefferson has had to catch and play in many, many games with the likes of Joshua Dobbs, Nick Mullins, Jaron Hall. I don't even know who the hell Jaron Hall is. And J.J. McCarthy, by the way, has been butt cheeks. And he's had 1 good quarter, and he's played 8 quarters of football and has only played 1 legit quarter of football. And now we're going to see Justin Jefferson go out there and do his thing with another mid quarterback coming up this weekend in Carson Wentz. So I get it. Everyone out there wants to say that Jamar Chase is the better wide receiver. I disagree. I look at Jamar Chase and I look at a guy that's very dependent on Joe Burrow. Not an opinion. The numbers back that up. Averages 58 yards a game and only had 1 touchdown in 7 games without him. Now, if Jamar Chase is who he is, that was this past Sunday with, obviously Jake Browning throwing in the football, it's a different conversation. But for right now, he's had 1 good game in 8 games without Joe Burrow. The rest, I mean, I'm looking at some of these games, guys. Like, look, he had 4 catches for 19 yards against the Browns in 2024. In 2023, he had 3 catches for 41 yards and no touchdowns back in 2023. But again, in 2023, against this Vikings team without Joe Burrow, 4 catches for 64 yards, nothing, no touchdowns. In 2023, against the Colts in Joe Burrow's absence, he had 3 catches for 29 yards. In 2022, in a game against Cleveland, he had 2 catches for 26 yards, like in 4 targets that game. Jamar Chase without Joe Burrow isn't even a number 3 wide receiver production-wise. Talent-wise, it's 1A and 1B when you talk about Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. Like that, I'm not disputing. Production-wise, he's very dependent on Joe Burrow, and the stats back that up. That's not a Kinner opinion. You can have an opinion that he's better than Justin Jefferson. It's just the wrong opinion. Like, you're wrong. He's not better. The numbers prove it. I mean, like I said, guys, you're bragging that your wide receiver who gets the ball from Joe Burrow, you mean to tell me that guy is better than the guy who puts up numbers regardless of who's throwing him the football? And when I say regardless, I mean Joshua Dobbs. I mean Nick Mullins. I mean Jaron Hall, J.J. McCarthy, Carson Wentz. Justin Jefferson elevates the quarterback. Jamar Chase needs the quarterback. That's the difference between these two. At least that's the story that's been told up to this point of their careers. And now we're going to have a good opportunity to see that be the case moving forward. I'm excited to see. I'm not excited to see the Bengals without Joe Burrow. Even as a Browns fan, I want to see the Bengals at full strength. I don't want no excuses for when this team, like 2 years ago, they missed the playoffs. It was because Joe Burrow was injured. Missed the playoffs last year. Yeah, Joe Burrow did his part. They just didn't have a defense. Every year, I want a healthy Bengals team to miss the playoffs for me to laugh. I can't laugh at you when there's constantly an excuse of why they're missing the playoffs. So I want to get that excuse for you out of the way. I'm telling you right now, Jamar Chase, the stats show he's dependent on Joe Burrow. Now he has an opportunity moving forward to prove that it's not going to be. So nonetheless, Damon Hahn says, are we sure that Malik Neighbors is not the best receiver right now? I need to see more. I love Malik Neighbors. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you're wrong, but I want to say, I lied. I mean this respectfully, Damon. He's not better than Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, but he's another one that I do like, that with the revolving door of quarterbacks in New York, he just keeps on trucking, right? Whether it was Daniel Jones, whether it was the Mafia guy last year, I forgot his name, DeVito or, Davino or Davino or Trevino. I don't even remember his name. Well, no matter what, Malik Neighbors puts up numbers. He's doing it with, obviously, right now, Russell Wilson. He'll probably be having to put up big numbers, of course, with Jackson Dart at some point. I like Malik Neighbors, and he's another guy that is not dependent on the quarterback. He just goes out and does his thing. I like those receivers. I like receivers who put up numbers no matter who's throwing them the football. What I don't like is the production of Jamar Chase. Notice I didn't say I don't like Jamar Chase. I just don't like that the production for him disappears when Joe Burrow disappears. That's not good, because you have an injury-prone quarterback and an expensive $40 million a year wide receiver that should be able to go out there and elevate quarterbacks. Justin Jefferson does it. Malik Neighbors does it. CeeDee Lamb does it. That's another good one, Damon. Thank you. Damon, CeeDee Lamb does that. Jamar Chase has to do that. And he did it last Sunday. And kudos to him for that, because that's the type of performance that the Bengals are going to need from him, for one, to justify the $40 million, but two, to compete and actually be in a position to strike and make the playoffs when Joe Burrow comes back with 3 games to go later in the season. Brian Weaver says Jamar was consistently the number 1 pick in all fantasy drafts. Not all those people making that pick were Bengals fans. Well, Brian, this isn't fantasy football. And the reason, and by the way, let me say this. If all those people who selected Jamar Chase number 1 in fantasy football, if they would have picked him knowing that he'd be without Joe Burrow for this pretty much the season, I think that take would have more footing. I don't think all those people that took Jamar Chase number 1 overall would have taken him number 1 overall had they known that Joe Burrow was going to be missing all that time this season. People take Justin Jefferson no matter who the quarterback is. J.J. McCarthy, Nick Mullins, Dobbs, right? Like, it just doesn't matter. What was the other quarterback? Remember, I don't even know this other quarterback's name. Jaron Hall. I don't even know who these cats are. So who knows what's going to happen. But that's what I'm excited about this matchup coming up. It's a chance for these two receivers with their backup quarterbacks to go head-to-head. I think it's going to come down to those two. Minnesota has a really, really good defense. That we do know. The Bengals have a bad offensive line. They can't run the football. And they have a backup quarterback who, by the way, likes to throw interceptions. That can get a little ugly. Jamar Chase is going to have a big game. He's going to have to step up. Like, I'm not even saying a big game from him guarantees that they win, but the best chance for the Bengals to win is a big game from Jamar Chase. We'll see. I'm excited for that matchup coming up this weekend. Justin Kenner, 1410 ESPN Radio, 937-518-1410, 937-518-1410. That's the number to call and jump in on the conversation. I just laid it out for you. You can think all you want that Jamar Chase is better than Justin Jefferson, but give me the receiver that can do more with less. Give me the receiver that could put up numbers no matter who's throwing him the football. Whether you like it or not, you cannot say that about Jamar Chase. When Joe Burrow's out there, he's the number 1 receiver in football. When he is not, you've seen it in those 7 games. He averages 58 yards a game, and he had 1 touchdown without Joe Burrow. Now, that was until this past Sunday. If he's the cat that we saw this past Sunday, Bengals still have a shot. Let's discuss more when we come back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers.
right here on ESPN Dayton, 1410 Wing AM.
All right, and we welcome you back. I'm Justin Kinner with you here, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM, 937-518-1410. Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, who's the better receiver between the two? I laid it out for you. The numbers speak for themselves. I don't know how you could say otherwise. Now, you're probably saying, well, Kinner, the numbers, Jamar Chase's numbers, more yards, more touchdowns, better quarterback. I mean, can you imagine if Justin Jefferson puts up numbers? Okay, Justin Jefferson puts up numbers with Nick Mullins, Joshua Dobbs, Jaron Hall, J.J. McCarthy, whoever. He puts up numbers no matter who, Sam Darnold, no matter who's throwing him the football, he puts up numbers. Jamar Chase, that's not the case. Didn't mean to make that rhyme, but whatever. Jamar Chase, without Joe Burrow, averages 58 yards a game. Before this past Sunday, in the 7 games without Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase had 1 touchdown in those 7 games. Jamar Chase had recorded games of 4 catches for 19 yards, 3 catches for 40 yards, 4 catches for 60 yards, 3 catches for 29 yards, 4 catches for 26 yards. Like that lack of production when your star quarterback is out, when you have a receiver like Jamar Chase who's getting $40 million a year, and I know he wasn't making $40 million a year at that time, but he's the level of player he's the guy that you look at and say, hey, our guy's out. What can you do to elevate your play? He doesn't elevate his play. Joe Burrow's gone. His production's gone. Now, this past Sunday, it was a different story. We'll see what ultimately happens. It got me thinking, okay, CeeDee Lamb has had to play in a lot of games without Dak Prescott. CeeDee Lamb has missed, Dak Prescott has missed 24 games in his career. CeeDee Lamb, and let's look at 1, 2, 3, 7 catches for 105 yards, 9 catches for 116 yards, 6 catches for 93 yards. All right. He got hurt in this game. He had 2 catches for 39 yards. I mean, that's 20 yards, almost 20 yards a catch in that regards. 10 catches for 67, 8 for 93, 6 for 97, 8 for 87, 7 for 75, 6 for 112. Like, that's what you expect from your number 1 wide receiver, no matter who's throwing him the football. I'm not hating. You just don't like that the facts are proving you wrong. Jamar Chase is not the better receiver of the two. When he has Joe Burrow, he is. But Joe Burrow misses a lot of games. And Justin Jefferson has yet to play with a level of quarterback like Jamar Chase has. CeeDee Lamb plays with a very good quarterback in Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott, like Joe Burrow, misses a lot of time. Give me Justin Jefferson over Jamar Chase any day of the week. Not even close. Not even close. When you say, well, Justin, what if Joe Burrow is back? Do you still want Justin Jefferson over Jamar Chase? Yes, because I want a guy that I know I can count on no matter what adversity the team has to face. That's Justin Jefferson. That's not Jamar Chase when it's all said and done. So there you go. We're going to talk about the Reds coming up in just a little bit. The Reds are in action tonight. The Chicago Cubs are 88-64. They clinched a playoff spot. And the Reds have a very good window here. 10 games remaining, 2 games back. And you have Hunter Green on the mound tonight, Nick Lodolo tomorrow, Singer in game 3, and then Andrew Abbott in game 4. The Reds' 3 best pitchers are pitching in 3 of the next 4 games, and Brady Singer's a heck of a pitcher too. But Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, and Andrew Abbott, to have those 3 horses in that rotation to go up against the Cubs, who the Reds have played well against this year, as wild as that sounds. I mean, the Cubs have won more than the Reds, but in regards to like the Reds bats, for whatever reason, the Reds bats always seem to wake up against the Cubs. We'll see if that could be the case tonight. The Reds are at home. It's a 7:15 first pitch, 6:45 the pregame. Now, we do have card subject to change coming up at 6 o'clock. That'll go right up to 8. The Reds game will resume in progress. So we'll have that coming up for you later on tonight. But keep that in mind. Card subject to change with Benjamin Chimera and Big Kev from 6 to 8. The Reds start at 7:15. We'll resume that game in progress at 8 o'clock following card subject to change with those guys coming up. So, all right. Lots more still to get into. I do want to talk about the Cleveland Browns. I don't feel like beating up on your team the whole entire time. I got to beat up on the Browns. I'm trying to figure out what direction they're trying to go in when it comes to, of course, the quarterback position. What's their plan? How do they plan on, figuring out? Because the one thing, if you're Cleveland, that you have to figure out is, do you have something in Dylan Gabriel? Do you have something in Shador? And I'm telling you right now, I know this sounds goofy, but like, even if the answer is no, that's a hell of an answer. That's a good answer. Because what you don't want to do is get to the end of the year and not know. And what I mean by that is, what is the point of Joe at this point being the starting quarterback for the Browns? Like, I know what happened. You bring Joe Flacco. You brought Joe Flacco in last time, magic happened. You bring Joe Flacco in this time, the only thing that's disappearing is the season. I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, yeah, magic's happening, just not the cool kind. And what I don't want to have happen is that they continue to hold on to this, man, like, we looked the part, we're almost there, and then lose a bunch of one-possession games and close games moving forward. And then by the time you do decide to throw Dylan Gabriel out there, now Dylan Gabriel doesn't have one of the top defenses in the league. Dylan Gabriel now doesn't have a healthy offensive line, a Quinshon Judkins, a Dylan Sampson, a David Njoku, and that type of thing. To me, Fannin Jr., what I don't want to see happen is that by the time they do decide to make the switch, that the Browns are so far out of it, guys are so banged up and injured, that we just don't get the true feel for what Dylan Gabriel can do. What happens if by the time they make the switch, a month or 2 months from now, Jerry Jeudy's out, Tillman's out, David Njoku gets hurt, and I'm not talking injuries into existence, but that's the reality of it. Right now, I want to know what Dylan Gabriel could do right now with the Cedric Tillman, with the Jerry Jeudy, with the healthy offensive line, with the new starting running back in Quinshon Judkins, who looked very, very good in his first game. It's the only positive takeaway, I guess, to take away from that game. I saw a funny stat the other day that, Jalen Hurts has yet to throw a touchdown this season. Dylan Gabriel has. We got to see Dylan Gabriel kind of step into a game late against Baltimore last week, and he threw a touchdown. So I thought that was kind of funny that that's the case. And who knows when we'll see Dylan Gabriel again. Could see him again this weekend if things get ugly against the Packers. And I think there's a good chance it can get that way if Cleveland comes out the way that they did against Baltimore. I was very passionate about making excuses early on for the Joe Flacco interceptions. They were very fluky interceptions. But it's always something. It can't always be, oh, well, the receiver, the turnovers have to stop. The streak of not being able to score more than 20 points in a game has to stop. I feel really good about the Browns rookies that they were able to draft, and I think that they're going to be really good with those guys moving forward. But man, to waste this defense, to waste what is, and again, it's 2 weeks in, so I'm not going to overhype it too much, but to go up against Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson in the first 2 weeks and still be the number one statistical defense in the NFL, I don't know. I'd say that's pretty wild to me. You're going to go up against an MVP candidate in Jordan Love coming up this Sunday. And it's like, the better the defense plays, the more pissed off I get. And by the way, and for those, I've seen Browns fans do this. Oh, I feel bad for Myles Garrett. I feel bad. Myles Garrett lost the right to be upset about anything. I heard Myles Garrett's comments in the postgame last week about how pissed off he is and about how just unhappy he is with the way that this team. You knew it was going to be a train wreck, and you came back anyways, which to a certain degree I appreciate. But what you also don't get to do is do the throw. It better not be him starting to plant the seeds of asking for a trade at a certain point. Because if I'm the Haslams, I don't trade him at all. I not that saying that that's what's happened or it's going to happen, but if that's him, if his frustration's already there after 2 weeks, man, I just fear what could, how quickly it can get to that boiling point. Who knows? But I don't feel bad for Myles Garrett. You knew this was going to be a bumpy ride. You came back, and you either came back for the love of the team, which I hope that's what it is, but I'm not naive to actually believe that, or you came back for the money. And if you came back for the money, you're rich. You were already rich, but you're even richer. And the team's still the same. So we'll see. I'm fascinated to see how all this is going to unfold. And, oh, yeah, what people are also forgetting about, Deshaun Watson's getting healthier and healthier. I mean, he's warming up. He's practicing, not with the team necessarily, whatever, but he's on the PUP list. So I think he's not even eligible to play for the next couple of weeks or whatever, team activities, this, that, and the other. But he's sprinting, he's throwing, he's working out. He's going to be ready to go too. Like, what do the Browns do? You have a very expensive, fully guaranteed quarterback that if he's healthy, how do you just not use him? I'm not saying I'm going to be upset. I'm just saying, like, it's a very weird predicament for the Browns to be in. I don't feel sorry for him. I don't expect it for you at all. I don't expect you to feel sorry for them at all. I'm just saying, in general, I find it fascinating to see what the Browns are going to do moving forward. Chad Kinster, what up, Chad? Do it right now. Flacco gets one more half. If it's out of hand, then give Gabriel the third quarter and Sanders the fourth. Let's see who actually has the best shot at earning the starting job. We all knew Flacco was just a fill-in. Yeah, because I talked about this with Jason Fitz 2 weeks ago. Like, everyone talked about how the Browns were going to have the number one pick next year. And I said, I could see that. I could see them being a team picking in the top 5, but I just didn't get those vibes. Like, for them to do everything they could to keep Myles Garrett, for them to do everything they could. They spent money in the offseason. They go get Joe Flacco. They named him the starter. You don't name a 55-year-old starting quarterback if you're planning on rebuilding, especially after you drafted not one but 2 quarterbacks in last year's draft. To me, they were giving off vibes of, hey, we feel confident that we could win with this team. And the thing about week 1, I know they didn't put points up on the board, which that's what it's all about, but they moved that damn football. The pass game looked solid. Like, they didn't run the football, but they ran the football last week. If they can get the passing performance from week 1 synced up with the run game from week 2 against Baltimore, Cleveland's an okay team. I'm not here to blow smoke up your you-know-what. I'm not going to sit there and be that delusional. But it's crazy. It's week 3, and I feel like the season's on the line coming up this Sunday. The season is on the line. Joe Flacco's career, I think, is on the line. I think his days as a starting quarterback are numbered if he can't find a way. Like, Cleveland cannot get blown out on Sunday. I believe if Cleveland can hang with Green Bay, but then again, I don't know either. I think they have to win Sunday, and that's a very bad predicament to be in because it's the Packers. They look like the most complete, dominant team in football right now. That's a tough ask to tell Joe Flacco, go beat the number 1 team in the NFL right now, or your career's done. And that's basically what's going to happen. But I threw out the question, like, what's the point of Joe Flacco in Cleveland? If you're 0-3, you're not making the playoffs. You're not going to flirt with the playoffs. What you need to know is, do we have our quarterback? And like I said, I don't care and as wild as this sounds, do I want them to have their quarterback? Yes. But if the answer is no, that's a good thing, because now you know what direction you have to go in next year's draft. But how cool would it be to know you have your quarterback heading into next year's draft when you already have 2 first-round picks and you've already you'd be building on what was just a kick-ass draft as it is? I mean, when you look at Harold Fannin Jr., you look at Quinshon Judkins, you look at Sampson, you look at Schlesinger, you look at these guys, like, these guys are unbelievable. That was a hell of a draft last year. The best players on the field, the majority of the best players on the field for the Browns have been the guys that they just drafted. And those picks range from, the second round all the way to the 5th round. Quinshon Judkins is a dude. Sampson's a great complimentary back. I mean, they already moved forward down to the 3 spot in the depth chart. That's how quickly those rookies have made an impact. Harold Fannin Jr.'s, pairing him with Njoku has been a phenomenal thing. But the whole offense has to come together. Everything has to come together for this to be able to be a success. And it's been anything but. Season's on the line on Sunday for Cleveland. Career's on the line on Sunday for old Joey, old Flacco, nonetheless. All right. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Hour 2 coming up next.